I could only get a bar graph here. But this is what the inventory from 2021 looks like for the city of Erie. And this is pretty standard in terms of the proportions of emissions that we expect from these different sectors. Energy consumption in your buildings and transportation are always the biggest culprits. And so that's where we want to, put a lot of our effort into reducing emissions. And the good news about this is that, particularly with building energy, this is also where you have the opportunity to save money and improve comfort. And so the co-benefits and the financial landscape of implementing things that reduce emissions is pretty favorable. And so I think that, it gives us an opportunity to really think about ways we can do projects that aren't particularly contentious, right? Nobody, no matter who you vote for, nobody wants to give more money than they have to their electricity company or their gas company. And so looking for ways to enhance efficiency, always a good start. So we spend the fall doing that inventory, and then we get to the spring semester, and I like to think of this as choose your own climate policy adventure. So some of the communities that we've worked with have wanted us to produce in that spring semester a draft climate action plan that they can put before their board of supervisors or city council to possibly adopt, or at least to use as a starting point to build something out. That's one pathway we can take. And we don't need to know what pathway we want to take until December. Other communities have wanted to go different routes. We worked with Lower Marion Township down near Philadelphia. They were already in the middle of like a big sustainability plan that was more comprehensive than just climate. And so what they wanted from us were future emissions scenarios based on different things they did, different actions they could take that would reduce emissions so that they could bake that into the sustainability plan they were working on. Really what we do is we kind of come together as a team. Peter and I, you all, the students that would be working with you, and we pull together a scope of work, what we think the deliverables from that should look like, and then that's what we spend the spring semester working on together. I always like to say that we can kind of let the students and Peter and I drive the fall semester as long as we have the data we need to do the inventorying work. We can do a lot of that for you. But in the spring, when it comes time to actually doing climate planning, that's when we need you all to be the drivers and just tell us how we can best help you move things along. So the spring semester deliverables, and I think that Jackie and Sarah have all of this if anyone is interested. Our students put together sort of a roadmap for what climate action plans look like. I believe there was a survey, there was some other stuff done. I just grabbed like a small screen capture here of one of the deliverables. But so we can utilize all of that work that's already been done and build on that and build on other things that you all are working on. I know from talking with Jackie and Sarah that producing a climate action plan is a pretty big priority for your group. And so we would love to help see that through. I have some other examples in here. This was the Marion Township one about the emissions scenarios.
Brandy,
this is another one that I pulled.
Brandy, do you mind
Yeah.
if I interrupt you for just 1 second? Because
No.
I just wanted to mention something that you spoke about in our meeting on Tuesday, was that the updates, the first semester, so the gathering of the information and the data that you really recommended, and Sarah, I think you agreed with this, to update the inventory that we have from a couple of years ago, because it's already a couple years old. Plus, we don't have some of the information from National Fuel, and you have some new tools to obtaining that data, and there was some difficulty obtaining, I think it was shipping. I had it written down, the shipping emissions.
It was like water and rail transport
Yes.
data was difficult to get. And it's interesting because most of our communities, those aren't things that we necessarily have to worry about. So yeah, I do recommend that we go through the inventorying process again. It's possible that will move more swiftly through the fall semester, and we can task the students to start with the climate action planning earlier than January. You know, we can we run these each as their individual projects. So even though the students are kind of going along in a cohort together, you know, if your inventory wraps by the end of October, fine, then we'll use that time to do additional, you know, choose your own climate policy adventure for the spring semester and just get a jump start on that. We'll move at your pace.
Can I interrupt? So, is this the inventory? Was it the inventory of the city as an entity, the government functions, or was inventory everything that happened?
Of everything. So there are two ways to do it. So some communities do choose to do a local government operations inventory, which would just be the buildings you own and occupy, the fleet vehicles that are part of your operation, travel associated with employees, things like that. What we did for you before, and what most communities choose to do, is a community-wide inventory. So like, we're getting your electricity provider to tell us, for the city of Erie, how many kilowatt hours did you distribute to the residential, commercial, industrial customers in aggregate, right? They're not telling you, well, Sarah Peelman's house used this much, you know, things like that, but in aggregate. And so, same with the transportation. We get data either from Google. You guys are big enough that we'll use Google EIE data. So our cell phones tell Google how much we're driving around all the time. And so they have really pretty robust data about vehicle miles traveled within any given jurisdiction.
Brandy,
yeah.
This was not an item that some of us expected to have on the agenda, and this is really all very good information, but we need to keep moving in the meeting, and we also need to kind of digest this before we actually make any decisions, I think.
Brandy, I wanted to just touch upon just one other thing, but I want to give you a chance if there's something else in the presentation that you think is really relevant to this discussion to show the group. Otherwise, I just wanted to touch on one other thing that we discussed at Tuesday's meeting. And it may be best to have the EAC members sort of look at the information, look at your website, and then if they have questions, they can certainly reach back out to you, or we can reach back out. I can reach back out to you to answer those questions. Is that okay with you? Since
That's fine. I feel like I missed the entire. I think there were two people just talking now, and the first person who talked, I couldn't really hear if there was a question in there.
No, I'm trying to keep us moving. This is Freda Tepfer. I'm the chair of the group, and like I said, this was an item that was just added to the agenda, and we do have quite a few things to talk about today.
That's fine. Yeah. No, and I'm happy to talk at
It was me, Brandy. I was just trying to explain to them it was the whole entire city. I was saying that's why the inventory takes so long, because it's a big data gathering process.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, no, go do the other things you need to do. I know none of us need extra meetings, but
can I just mention the one other thing that we discussed, and with having you here just to support that, we'll move into this next. This will be a good segue to our next item on the agenda, which is the talking points. So as I explained to you on Tuesday, to you and Peter, each of our members took on, certain groups or entities, either internally, boards or commissions, and some authorities, to discuss with them what the EAC is doing in terms of the LCAP and some of our other secondary priorities. And I explained to you on Tuesday that Sam Mason, she actually put together some talking points, and it's in your packet. And as I was telling you that, you and Peter, you had offered, obviously, if we were part of the program, that they would be a support to us. so that, let's say Aaron goes to, I think you're the sewer authority, right, Aaron? Say you go to the sewer authority and you discuss the importance of this local climate action plan and what the EAC is trying to accomplish, yada, 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 right? Well, let's say, and not for everyone, but maybe that particular authority is not on board, or maybe they have some skepticism around it, or maybe there's just some difficulty. We could potentially use the technical assistance support to help us but with buy-in, to help us so that those entities are actively participating at the beginning of the process and not getting pulled in at the end when they might not be willing to participate. So they had offered that as part of this participation, and I thought that would be a great support to us, because then we have the experts, not that you all are not experts, but we have an additional level of
Are these
expertise.
undergraduate students?
No, this would be the main team coming in. So with Brandy and Peter, the professors, the academics, and also, coming in to support the EAs, to support us in those discussions that we talked about last time as our action items for the LCAP. So did I miss something, Brandy, in that?
No.
Okay.
I'm just concerned that there be a true local slant to the plan, rather, that I'm nervous about people in State College.
Well, that's why they're gathering the data, because that's just.
But that's data, that's not the human.
Right, and so the next part, the first semester, they helped develop a survey that we could reach out to the community with and helped create a next step timeline of ways, because you're right, the most important part of the local climate action plan is getting the information from the citizens themselves. In addition to our energy use and where are we generating all this, and then developing our priorities. Like how can we reduce energy or consumption, or how can we improve efficiency, or what are the priorities and where do we need to focus in our plan, our priorities going into the future?
Well, and the Partners for Places also feeds into
Right.
that. I think the importance of collaborating with Brandy's class, well, not Brandy's class, Brandy and Peter's class, but Penn State on this project is that data accumulation, right? You don't need somebody local doing that, right? And I sharing with Jackie over here that like us as a collective trying to get that data is going to be much harder than their class doing it, because they have access to tools that we don't necessarily have access to, and they have time, right?
Well,
the students are doing this as part of a class, so they have time that is devoted to this. So.
Right, it's just I heard something about that they might actually prepare the plan.
Under our guidance, but she was also saying that's in the spring semester, and that's really in conjunction with us, not them doing it without talking to us, right? And we would have the data from the fall semester, and we would have the people for places kind of information that would feed into that. And I think that we become an integral part of that as well.
For sure.
Yeah, and I can share with the group, if you're interested, the documents they generated in the first round.
I did. I sent that to them today.
All the ones I sent you?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I share that. The other thing with the engagement piece is that, we acknowledge through the P4P program project that we have some challenges, and there are some gaps in that engagement. And so we've learned from that, we're learning from that, and that we'll be able to synthesize some of the data that, we've.
Oh, you mean that
the Partners for Place and the listening
there
session.
wasn't that much.
There wasn't as much representation
Right.
from the frontline community,
Right.
as many of the frontline communities that we needed.
Right.
And so we recognize that there are challenges, and also we recognize through the advisory group that there are a lot of groups, like this gentleman said during the public comment, that are doing things, but we're not like syncing. We're not all working together. And that component of it was definitely came to the top during the P4P process too. So that's really important. I don't know where they can help us there, but at least they can organize us, I would imagine, into, finding the partners, the organizations, and at least get us somewhere a bit more organized in that direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just, I was at a meeting, you know, and somebody from Booker T said, we'll have a meeting here, we'd be glad to have a meeting here. And you know, they didn't have a meeting, UE, you know, the none of those groups had meetings.
Right, and
you know, we talked about the issues.
Well, I have an update, and in your packet, you have an update on the P4P. We can go through that after I'd like, maybe Sam should do her part, but I can give you an update on the P4P program. It wasn't for lack of trying, and we had to make a decision with the advisory group what to do. Do we move forward? We're under a timeline. Do we continue to try and engage in this first phase, or do we do it in the next phase? Which,
Saying you're willing to host a meeting doesn't get the meeting hosted.
Right.
No.
They have to do more work to help host the meeting.
and
So
actually,
not all of them were able to meet that.
Yeah, I
deadline.
read what
Like
it
Randy
says.
said, there was a deadline for the project.
and
so-
Chantil from Booker T said he would not be able to host a listening session
Well,
at the
yeah,
end.
at the last minute, yeah.
Well, in July.
Yeah,
Due to
it's-
some of the vacation that was
Right.
coming up. So, I mean, there'll be opportunities, like Sam had stated in the last meeting, there'll be opportunities to engage in this, hopefully, in the next round
Yes.
or phase.
Brandy, I think we can let you go. You don't need to be listening to all of this. Thank you so much for your time and sharing
Yeah.
this, and then we'll circle back to you.
Yeah, that's fine. And if anyone has any questions, I'm just brobinson@psu.edu. Feel free to drop me a note.
We know how to find you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Randy.
Bye.
Okay, so should I just start?
Oh, I'm sorry,
No,
yeah.
you're fine.
Discuss that too, just beforehand.
Oh.
That's just like a recap of who got what.
Yeah, so in the packet, in your packets, I mean, this was sent around as an email, but just to make sure everybody's seeing it, we have who was assigned, or who volunteered or was voluntold at the last meeting. What kind of community, city-based organizations or facility, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Anyway, that you were assigned to. Who are you speaking to? I thought I had the MTA, but that's all right. I'll do the Redevelopment Authority. I'm not picky.
I
But
had the MTA in the
I believe
council,
you.
yeah.
I said I thought I was. It's fine. So this is who everybody was assigned. Are we all okay with this? And you can think about that. And then the other thing that we had talked about at our last meeting was if we're going to go talk to stakeholders, what are some talking points? This was a brain dump of like 10 minutes that you see in front of you, but these are the talking points that I thought of, just kind of a brief introduction of what an environmental advisory council is. Our current priorities, you can talk about how we came to these priorities as well, as you wish. So the local climate action plan, and then the single-use plastics and litter mitigation. The points under single-use plastic and litter mitigation were just a couple of topics that we have discussed. I know that Freda, for example, is very big on the portable water refill station, so that was the first one that I thought of. But I really kind of go into, because our immediate focus and our primary focus is the local climate action plan, kind of explaining what a local climate action, what an LCAP is, the steps to developing one, and then under the steps to developing is the reaching out and communicating, and that's the point of the Partners for Places grant. So then on point 4, I explain what the phase 1 Partner for Places grants, the 5 tasks that are associated with that, and that the point of doing this is to get to that phase 2, which helps us to set our goals and our actions. And so this is kind of where what we're doing can, and what the Partner for Places and what Brandy is talking about can all come together, right? Like they're collecting the data in the fall. By some point in the fall, we'll have kind of the impact or the final reporting out of our Phase 1 Partner for Places grant, and then we can be thinking in the spring about what does our actual LCAP look like. So those are the talking points. Feel free to edit, add, change, whatever you want to them. I will not be offended in any way, shape, or form.
There was something I was wondering about after hearing Brandy, and she said transportation, and what was the other one? Water.
No, building.
Buildings. So I wondered if there's a way to sort of simulate what would be the energy use transportation-wide, citywide, or what is under our current configuration of a public transit versus what would be the citywide energy use under a more robust public transportation
So
system.
there are computer models that can help you do
Yeah,
that, but the
I'd
first
like-
thing we need to have is good data, and so
Right.
getting back to
I just wondered if that's a thing that could happen.
that is something, yes, and that, I mean,
She
that's,
said they did that as an example with some of the other communities.
yeah.
If they did this improvement, how would the energy use change, or this, how would it change? So that is an option that we can ask for. That's
Yeah,
what
and
we
my
can ask
students
for.
actually did it with the EMTA specifically last fall. They did a greenhouse gas audit for the current buses and their running and everything, and then if they changed to natural gas, which is what they're currently transitioning to, and what impact it makes, and the answer is none. And then if they electrify their vehicles over time, what does that look like? So yeah, there are tools out there that
Yeah,
can do that.
I mean, what I'd like to see more is what if there was an EMTA that made it possible for more people to ride the bus with the frequency of service, density of service.
You have to have a certain number of people that are on the bus to make buses make sense.
Right.
And right now, I think their ridership is a real issue. But that's part of the climate action process, yes. And I don't have all the answers. But
Ridership is an issue because the service is not.
we can debate that. You know, it's a topic of conversation. I don't know that that's completely the answer.
Yeah, okay, but thanks for.
Yeah.
So, people can then now move forward and try to schedule appointments to go to the various entity meetings.
That was the plan.
Yep.
How do we all feel about that? You have talking points and you have assignments.
Right.
And I sent the schedule out of the monthly meetings for most of these. I don't think I had the EMTA or the Water Authority. It was just the city ones.
Yeah.
So you may have to contact
Yeah, if you-
person on your sheet to ask if you could maybe attend their public meeting
Yeah,
and then go.
Yeah, I know when the EMT meets.
Mhm. Okay, okay. And I know this is like a framework, what you put together, Sam, and it's very helpful. Do you feel that you need this fleshed out further, or do you think this is an okay kind of framework to bring with you and you feel comfortable speaking to these points?
I don't know that, having just seen it, I personally would want to look at it. I tend to.
Sent it to you weeks ago. Sent it to both of you guys, like 2 days after our last meeting. Just so you've seen it. I mean, you should have.
Okay. I would probably use this as a starting point.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, feel free to edit it.
So we've got about 20 minutes left?
I just want to, I know this is not
Yeah.
my place, but one of the questions you could ask your partners when you're meeting with them or your assignments is, are they applying for funding? Are they applying for funding that would influence or partner with efforts that you all, the organizations that you're affiliated with? So for instance, RACE has a very large grant they're getting from, is it the EPA?
I think it's EPA,
Or the Department of Energy Department of Energy to do weatherization audits. So there might be things happening in those organizations that we're not aware of that might be helpful.
I don't see Dave Rocco here. Is he not coming?
He is not able to come today, but Sarah said that she spoke to him and can at least talk to us a little bit about that. Thanks, Gretchen. That's a good point and should be added to maybe some of the questions, maybe some questions and takeaways at the end.
Yeah, I didn't give questions, I gave
Talking points.
Yeah.
Or we could do recommendations or suggestions maybe. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I briefly spoke to them about some of the issues. I mean, I'm not sure about everything you want to ask, but I don't mind trying to answer the questions I can, and then I can see if I can come to another meeting and ask.
Are you near a microphone?
The people that I'm talking to.
You know, what we were talking about, Celebrate Erie apparently is not, so when somebody uses Perry Square, is there a permit? What control does the city have over how the entities behave, over how the vendors behave, you know, in terms of could they be required to use certain kinds of food containers? Could there be a requirement to have a water bottle fillings? Well, we do have one, but really one, like for Celebrate Erie, isn't gonna make a bit of difference.
Well, in regards to the types of containers they use, it would probably fall under the same situation of the recyclables, because in the past, we've tried to have vendors provide recycling, we've tried to provide recycling containers for like plastic bottles and not just garbage cans, but there's no way to police that. And so once people start throwing garbage in the recycling cans, then it's all garbage. And so one year, Sister Pat had youth volunteers that wore special recycling signs on themselves, and they were assigned to each garbage can and recycling can station, and they would help people dispose of the things into the right can. But unless you literally have people at every single garbage can and recycling can directing them, you're not able to do the recycling. So the sustainable food containers, I think, might fall in that same situation of enforcement. It's like, how would he enforce that? How would he go out and make sure the containers really are made of sustainable materials or not? And then if not, what's going to happen? Is he going to shut them down? Or, like, what do we do? Do we fine them? Do we tell them they can't come back? Like, the problem, like, so it's more of a capacity issue, I think, of how we would enforce it. Because we can ask them to do it voluntarily, but I don't know that we could enforce it, because he's only one person.
Is there a contract?
The vendors, every single individual vendor applies for a permit, and they go over with Mr. Ruckel what their needs are. Whether it's, do they need street closings? Do they need water? Those water things to keep people from going down the street? Do they need a certain number of garbage cans? Even requiring them to have a certain number of waste disposal cans is an issue for him. He can't enforce that. He hasn't been able to enforce it. So, like, certain vendors generate extra garbage. Like, if you're standing there in line and ordering all that food and then you stand there and eat it, there's more garbage. And so sometimes the garbage cans that are provided aren't enough. But so people have asked to have each vendor also provide their own garbage can. But again, how do you enforce that? Like, he's asked them to do it, but you can't really enforce it. And so he just works with them individually. So when an individual event is a little bit easier, but like the Rib Fest, there's like 30 different vendors all at the exact same time. Or, at Celebrate Erie, there's multiple vendors at the same time. So it's not just one vendor in the park.
I mean, isn't there a way to have something like an occupancy permit? You don't get to start vending until you can prove that you have what you're supposed to have?
The permit that he has now, it isn't like that, I don't think.
Yeah, maybe.
Because they have to require what their needs are for police, if there's security needs, and then certain things you have to pay for if you want the bandwagon. But I mean, as to what materials they're using.
But does the city have the ability, if it chooses to start requiring those things?
They don't have the ability to enforce it, is what Mr. Rocco was saying. they have the ability to change it on the paper and say, you have to do this, but then how are they going to make them is the
That you
problem.
can't open your,
But somebody has to be there to say they can't open. There has to be enforcement.
right.
I think is all that.
So you have to
and-
charge a fee to, and then you have, that helps pay for the enforcement,
But what would
something.
they charge an additional fee for?
for the inspection.
For the application, I don't know, so.
I don't know,
Yeah.
they're already charging, I mean, we have fees for a lot of things right now. He just isn't sure how we could implement something like that, it being only one person that runs the whole program.
Well, why don't we have him come the next time so that we can hear from him what the issues are and how to address them?
Right, and.
Well, his biggest issue was enforcement, but yeah, we can definitely invite him to come back again, I mean, you could, as often as you would like. I'm just saying what he went over with me was enforcement. He feels like he doesn't have the ability to enforce these types of things.
You just turned yourself off.
But perhaps I didn't get into details with him, so sure, you can invite him back to discuss specific details.
Yeah, I mean, he's the expert, right? And we want to,
He's the expert on how the city's currently doing it
Right.
versus how it can be done in other
Right.
locations.
I
Right,
don't know
right.
that he's the expert on that second part. It sounds like
Right.
he's the expert on the first part, but he may not have answers
So
for the second part.
he's our data, and we're going to develop an action plan based on Fred's recommendation.
Well, so we would need to, then,
Right.
somebody would need to look up what are some examples in other
We'll
communities
do that.
on how they do that, I think is what I'm hearing. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. And this-
that the problem is that we can change the policy, but without enforcement of that policy, it's hollow. And so what we would have to come up with is understanding how other communities
Yeah, that's a great
have
idea.
led to enforcement.
How to bring the
Precisely.
examples of how other people are doing
Yeah.
it.
Are you, when you speak about enforcement, are you saying, okay, let's say there's 30 vendors, you said, for RibFest, right? So they're all located right here in this small section of the park. Enforcement would be going to those 30 vendors over the 3 days that they're there, making sure
single
that
day.
they have
Sustainable
food containers.
Right, and
That's
not
the enforcement
styrofoam.
that's needed. I
Right.
mean, that's not, and if you don't,
Then what
then
do
you
you
don't
do?
operate that day.
Right,
I
you
mean,
don't open.
So
Well, so they have to have the authority then to shut them
authority and
down.
capacity, those are
Yeah.
the two things.
And
They
they've
must have a
already
health,
paid for the
they
event.
must have a health department inspection before they open.
Well, but health department and sustainable packaging are very different things.
Right,
The health
but I'm
department
just-
is not going to
Right,
shut them
but
down.
it's a concept.
Yeah.
There is a concept of, I mean, it's one thing for us to say, to go to, one of the restaurants in town and impose things on them. But this is our park. These
Right.
are,
And I'm
we
not
should be
saying-
able to have more control. It should be easier to do.
And he's not saying it's impossible, he's saying currently he doesn't know how he would do it. But if we come
Right.
up with some ideas or
Yeah.
examples of how it
Yeah.
works, then we could try to come up with a plan. And as far as the water refilling stations, I didn't speak with him about that, but I would think that, I don't know how expensive they are. I don't know if that's something the city would need to get funding and provide one, or I don't know that you can ask individual groups to all buy their own and then have it each time.
Well, there's the city, there's the water authority. I asked, the water authority said that they've been thinking about it, but that's all they've been doing.
So they
They
could
have only
possibly
been thinking
provide
about
them
it.
and people would rent them or something?
They'd have to acquire them, but to have, like for Celebrate Erie, you'd have to have 3 or 4 to make it work.
Before we move on to the water, can I just ask a question about the health department? We might not be able to answer this, but before the vendor
They already
gets-
have to have a license approved by
So
the
they
health
have
department.
to have a license approved that's not specific to that particular event for RibFest or so.
Right.
They just
Correct.
have to have a vendor license
And
through the
they
health
submit
department.
that with their
Okay, okay.
application.
So it's not at the health department level necessarily that the sustainability factor would come into play, or could it? I mean, there's that.
We wouldn't ask them to get involved.
Well, I mean.
No, it's a concept.
I don't think it's under the health department's purview to deal with
Maybe not.
sustainability of containers. Do you see what I'm saying? Because they're more
about-
worried about,
Food
No.
poisoning and
Yeah.
things like that.
Although it's not necessarily, maybe it isn't right now, but maybe that's something at least,
I think you're talking federal guidelines on there, and they haven't even listed plastic, and they
And
will
w-
probably never list plastic as a pollutant.
Actually,
because
I
of the lobbying that's associated with plastic.
I
So
saw-
even though we know that plastic containers are constantly shedding micro and nanoplastics into our food, they're never going to probably label that as a contaminant or a pollutant.
I actually saw something about some federal program around sustainable food containers, just in the last week.
Yeah, not in the health, not going through health.
No.
Not going through, that's what I'm saying.
No,
I'm saying
no.
that with regard to public health, you're not going to see, that's not where it's going to be regulated. It would be regulated on like the environmental front or the environmental justice front or something else, but not health.
But I just pushed back another meeting till 4:30, so.
Wait, but is that the
We have
reason-
to get out of here by
we have-
4:15.
It's not up to you. It's up to the,
No, I'm
But
saying
thanks.
I'm gonna leave soon.
right.
Oh, you were warning us.
Okay, so,
But of course, having Mr.
so
Ruffalo
there's all these different grant processes, and it would be, one thing would be to look for, I don't know if it's us, like I said, I'm talking to the Water Authority, I've talked to the Downtown Partnership.
I have an idea. I'm working on a grant. I have a grant idea in mind, and so I can let you know by
Around
next
water bottle
meeting if
filling
we,
stations?
yes.
Cool.
So maybe we can move on. Also includes disposable food packaging.
I just
And a
want-
neighborhood cleanup, actually, so
Yeah.
I'm just
I
hitting
just want
it
to
all.
say, the Noodle Love and Crepe, Give a Crepe are two places that have those kind of containers now.
But you have to have composting. The containers they have are pointless when they go into a trash.
Right, they're compostable containers, but they're still going into the garbage.
But it's better than styrofoam.
It's still
Right,
going
it's-
into a landfill, so that's questionable,
But is
honestly.
it a paper product? Then maybe
It's
still-
decomposing and releasing natural gas, which is likely going into the atmosphere, and in fact, landfills are the second or third highest emitter of methane gas into the atmosphere in the United States.
Maybe we'll have to add the landfill to
So,
our
another
greenhouse
aspect
gas
of compost.
inventory.
That we'll have to
I actually,
advisory around,
I actually was at a big folk festival where they washed the place. I don't know if they do it every year. I was like, they washed.
Well,
Anyway,
All right, we have, Gretchen hasn't had a
Yeah,
chance to
Gretchen's here.
speak.
Oh,
Right.
that's okay.
You have 5 minutes, go.
I won't take, I'm not sure what I'm here to talk about, but I can talk about cleanups. I know that litter mitigation is one of your priorities, and Love Your Block has been doing cleanups this summer and piloting a way to basically have a grab-and-go cleanup program that anyone could do, really. It's not complicated. But we're using cleanups as a way to engage with residents. The cleanup is the benefit, but the overall goal is to engage with people where they live and what their challenges are and the resources that they need for a variety of things, not just keeping the neighborhood clean, but housing and health issues and basic needs, trash cans, trash bags. There's a lot of folks out there that don't know the processes on how to get rid of certain items. Not to mention, recycling isn't even on the radar for most people. So so far this year, we've done 3 cleanups, and we've gathered just under 6 tons of large items and debris. And so we're just almost halfway through the summer, so I'm sure we're going to exceed, 10 tons of debris. That's nothing in terms of what the city collects, I'm sure. But the items that we are helping people get rid of, well, first of all, let me just mention that we're mostly in kind of underserved areas in the city, although not all. Our first event was on West 2nd Street in our West Bayfront, and we had 1.5 tons of junk and debris that were brought. Well, there's junk and debris everywhere. And so many of the folks that our team are helping are elderly and/or disabled and/or veterans who do not have the physical capability to remove items from their property. And they are not necessarily connected to any kind of social media or online services. So a lot of them are just so grateful for someone to come to their door and say, I've had a mattress on my back porch for 5 years and I don't know how to get rid of it, that kind of thing. So we use all volunteers to come to our events and help folks remove items from their homes. We, as a team, collect TVs and electronics. We set those aside from the dumpsters. We collect tires for folks. I know the city does have a program where they do that every year, every spring, but again, if you don't have a car, if you don't have a way to lift those items into your car, that can be a challenge. And so we try to separate those. We do separate those items. We use Pro Waste. They do take out all of the metal. They recycle all of the metal there. I can't speak to whether we're doing everything 100% in compliance with recycling, but I think we would be interested in getting your input on how we do it. You're more than welcome to visit one of our cleanups, and you can kind of observe and take notes. And we're doing our best with what we have. We have a $2,000 budget for every cleanup. So a 30-yard dumpster is $540. So we've had neighborhoods where we've used 2 30-yard dumpsters. You can do the math there. So
how are you paying for disposing of the TVs and monitors?
City of Erie is doing that for us. We take all of those items up to the Public Works Department, and there's 2 identified areas where we leave electronics and where we leave tires, and then the city...
We pay for it.
Yeah, we pay for it.
We pay for it out of the refuse program.
Okay, but residents who do it legally have to pay, right?
Yep.
Any store that sells tires will recycle them.
Yeah,
they
but
just
I'm
charge you
thinking
the
of
fee.
monitors and TVs.
I think Liberty Iron will take, not Liberty, Lincoln Metal. You have to pay to dispose of them, and then the county has an event once a month.
So we're providing a grant for folks for this service, so we're not just going into neighborhoods and saying this is like free. We're providing grant money that we've applied for.
Well, the taxes are paying for the refuse budget.
And also that, right.
Sometimes you have volunteers, and Mike, the other meeting, 2 meetings ago, was saying a lot of residents have trees that are either dying or down, maybe down in their backyard.
Yes.
And if we could facilitate a way to get their trees down, and then they could, make their trees into compost and then mulch.
We have probably off the top of my head about 35 people right now who we've worked with that would love that.
Yeah.
They would love someone to come and take off that kind of debris from their property.
So would that be another $2,000 for each time you did that?
I don't know.
It would depend on the grant funder, because like the city budget money, we can't help people cut trees down on private property. Our money has to be spent in the public right-of-ways, the boulevards, or the parks. And so you'd have to find funding that allows you to do that type of work on private property.
But we're not restricted from doing that.
Love Your Block
is not. We go on people's properties all the time with their permission.
Yeah. And the average tree to cut down is $800. So.
Right. But we have, just to answer your question, we haven't gone actively in and cut down trees, but we have gotten volunteers to go onto properties to remove really large logs and downed trees to the public right-of-way, and then Public Works will come and get them for us. Right, so that's kind of a collaborative thing that we've done.
Yeah, if the trees were standing, I would not recommend using volunteers to cut trees down.
No, we would not do that. But we've had
professional contractors.
We've had volunteer contractors come and do it for us.
Yes. Yeah. That would be different.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. Sorry.
My timekeeper is gesturing to me. So, okay. So we'll keep moving along with all these things.
When is the next cleanup?
The next cleanup is this Saturday in the Lower East Side by Wallace Baseball Park. After that, we're going to be in Washington Park on August 3rd. We're going to be in the Buffalo Road area doing some removal of debris, a lot of like brush and down trees in one of their community gardens. And we're going to be on East 7th and the East Bayfront on August 24th. And we're there Saturdays, all of those dates from 9 until 1.
And if you could please spread the word, because we've had a lot of difficulty getting volunteers, that if you could spread the word for the Love Your Block program, it would be very helpful. Maybe Gretchen can provide, or I can provide the link to the registration for volunteers, and maybe you can send it out to your neighbors and some other people that you might know, because all help is appreciated. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn? What?
Quickly mention the, I don't know, I guess just quickly mention, it's the last two items on the agenda, I think, but the EAC gathering.
I'm sorry, you're right.
That's happening,
In the fall.
that stuff has been sent around in the fall. And then,
So the city would have to join to get the 10% discount? Is that how it would work?
Yes, I have to still correct. Carol Grayshaw, she sent out an email. The city has to become a member, and they would get a 10% discount on registration for in-person events and virtual conferences. All webinars would be free to us.
I guess, okay.
So, right, so, and do you know how much it would cost for the city?
I haven't spoken to her
Okay.
about that yet. We do have some training money out of the department that we possibly could pay for a membership. I can't imagine it's so expensive, but I have to ask her, and we could do that rather quickly. So that's on my list of things to do.
Okay. Sorry, I was just, thought it was,
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
it's in Philadelphia, right?
oh.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
Wednesday, July 31st, Gannon is hosting public feedback sessions on the center that is proposed for the Blasco Library. So just wanted to share that. All right, now I can make a motion.
Before we adjourn, I'm sorry, just really quickly, I wanted to, I attended, and I know Gretchen was there, and Sister Pat was there, and Mike was there, the public session for Erie Coke last week.
I was there.
You were there too, Freda. I saw you walk in. So it was a little, for me, it was, I wish there were more people from the neighborhood. I didn't find that they were able to capture enough people from the neighborhood. There were some, and there was a lot of unanswered questions, naturally, because of the process that they're taking. But yeah, I don't know what your takeaway, Mike, was, but I just kind of came away kind of like, okay, here we're moving into this. There were no answers. There were some people who were a little disgruntled, obviously, which was a natural reaction to all of this. But I think for the most part, the neighbors that were there were receptive to at least doing the testing. So that's good. That's very good. Anything else that I missed on that? No? Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay, any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.